Hello, everybody. This is Jaster. Hope everybody's doing well today. Just a quick message before we get into tonight's brand new special Iceberg video series that we got for you guys. We told y'all we had a couple of projects in mind. This is the bigger of the two that we've got, and because of that, we're going to have to break that into multiple sections for you guys. That means multiple videos or podcast episodes, whichever way you like to digest your weekly KOR. So, just letting everybody know ahead of time that this is not the normal kind of content that the podcast covers, and we'll get into more kinds of stuff like this if the liking of it ends up panning out. If you guys like it, make sure to subscribe, like, engage with the video. Every bit helps, and it lets us know what kind of content that you guys are looking out for. So thank y'all, have a wonderful day, and let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to one of the almost famous side shows of KOR Live, KOR After Hours, where we offer you only the finest of the finer things. Tonight on our spooky, spectacular event, we have Kazari Iwakura. How are you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right.
Is that intro a little better?
Yeah, that was a lot better. Good job.
I got at least tripped down the hill before I...
You slurred it a little bit, but hey, that's okay. Sometimes I slur it a little bit too when I do an intro. So, hey, everybody. We know it's been 2 weeks since we did our last episode. We had a bit of a summer vacation while we were but we haven't been completely sitting on our ass. We've been getting our YouTube archive set up, and that's we're slowly moving things over there. Not to say that we are moving off of our current platforms, we're just building another one. But anyways, so I'm just going to get right into it, if you don't mind, Jaster.
Take it away, Captain.
Alright, so, me and Jaster, we both love our Squatch. And we bring up Bigfoot a lot, whether it be the game made by our favorite devs. We love you guys, by the way. Or if we're talking about our actual beliefs when it comes to the cryptid itself, is a topic that frequently comes up whenever I'm hanging out with him. And we were looking around recently, and we were like, damn, man, there aren't any good Bigfoot icebergs on the internet.
So, true to form, I was like, let's make one. And here we are, baby. We'll have the image posted up in Twitter. We'll try to include it in the YouTube area as well. Wherever we can put it, we'll try to get an image link to the iceberg. That way you guys can follow along with the stupid shit we're about to throw it down here. Because some of this stuff is wild, baby. You know, we're talking about iceberg. We got 10 levels on this thing.
Yeah.
And we dug.
We dug very deep in the lore for this.
We have
now,
hundreds of podcast episodes down, interviews down, the whole 9 yards. Like,
yeah, no,
so we're going to be referencing a lot of work, and we're going to do our best to include where we got this information whenever we bring it up.
Yeah, we'll try and cite our works. So I'd like to put a disclaimer at the start. I am a Bigfoot believer, but that said, I do not. There's a lot of this stuff on this iceberg that I do not believe in.
I like to entertain myself. That's why I know about this stuff.
Yeah, and so so basically the way this is gonna go is we're gonna bring up a spot on the iceberg. We'll explain it, and then I think we're gonna have to just keep it as tight as possible, right? Because like, if we give our opinions on it, then we're gonna get into a discussion. We're just trying to, snappily get through these explanations.
I've got an idea. This way we can gauge ourselves. Yeah. We can save our general thoughts on certain topics until we get through that level.
Okay.
And then we can throw some shit out there. That way we know about what amount of time we have to throw some stuff out there. Because I feel like some of this stuff might not be that hard to cover.
Yeah. Yeah, no, some of this is like, it takes one sentence to explain. And other ones require a bit more context. I know we have at least one on here that is actually 2 different things. And that's down on like level 6 of our iceberg. So
it's down.
Anyways, we've done enough preamble. We're gonna jump right into it. So our first level on the iceberg is called Sounds in the Woods. This is the very surface level up in the sky. We're above the surface level. We're up in the sky, and this is like you're hearing things in. We named it after like the kind of noises you hear in the woods that you could probably attribute to anything else. So like maybe you hear a branch break or something fall or something like that,
or maybe you got moose in the woods and you hear something running and it's big.
Yeah. So our first point is Bigfoot is a man in a suit. This is the first thing you're going to hear any detractor say. Oh, it's a man in a suit. It's fake.
It all really started whenever somebody came forward trying to throw out the Patterson-Gimlin footage, claiming to be said man in a suit in the footage. That's kind of where the whole argument started.
And ever since then, a lot of detractors and non-believers have pointed at that, and it's a really stupid counter-argument, because like there are tons of good counter-arguments against Bigfoot, and this is one of the laziest ones. Because it's like, alright, if it's a man in a suit, why is it so widespread? Is there a secret organization of people in suits dedicated to fooling people that there is an unidentified hominid roaming the woods in North America? If so, if there's conspiracy of that size, why hasn't anything leaked at that point? The larger an operation gets, the more likely you're going to have a leak. It's the same reason why the conspiracy theory of the moon landing being fake is also outlandish and untrue.
Yep.
So, it's just, duh. No, it's not a man in a suit. Come on. And here's the thing, even if somebody did have the money to make a suit that was expensive enough to have convincing muscles and stuff like that, they ain't gonna be running around in the fucking woods wearing it, I can tell you that much.
It didn't exist back in the 1960s whenever Patterson-Gimlin actually happened.
No.
But...
And speaking of Patterson-Gimlin, that's our next point on this tier.
I was about to do that. Ooh.
Oh. We've referenced Patty in the past, but if you've ever seen any Bigfoot special TV show or whatever, you've seen a clip from this. This is the shot. This is the footage filmed in Bluff Creek during the 1960s by not Robert Patterson. That's the actor.
Roger Patterson, I think.
Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin.
Yeah.
Who had ridden into a recently flooded and drained Bluff Creek up in Washington. And they saw this creature here, who would come to be known as Patty, walking across the way, briefly giving a dismissive look at them, and then walking back into the woods. Very, very famous footage. The famous quote of Sasquatch mid-stride comes from this. This is like the surface level Bigfoot. This is the one that's in everybody's minds. And I love it a lot because it's the most ironclad piece of evidence we have to this day. It's some of the clearest big footage we've ever had and ever will get. And it, no matter how many times people try to debunk it and break it, they can't. It's invincible. Patty fucking rules.
Right. I'd like to also point out that if you watch my Twitch stream, you'll also know this creature because that's the start screen. I had to plug myself a little bit there, you know what I mean?
Yeah, we usually put our Twitch links in the description, but like if you ever show up for a Jaster stream in time, you'll be able to watch Patty for a little bit.
Very good. So let's get on to the next one. The Yeti / Almas, which is basically the northern European equivalent of Bigfoot.
Asian.
Yeah. Like, I would say there are, some amount of Almas in, like, Western North Europe? Like...
No, this is nowhere near Europe.
There's no... Okay, that's fair. I kind of figured with the abominable snowman and all that stuff over there that somebody would have a sighting of it up in, like, the north of Moscow mountains, you know, or something like that.
No, they have a different Squatch-like up there.
That's fair.
I don't remember the name of it, but it's I do remember it's one of the theories that's brought up in relation to the Dyatlov Pass incident.
Yes. Now, like, that being said, the Yeti and the Almas are two different peoples or creatures, or whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, because like the Yeti, that's in the Himalayas, and the Almas is in the mountain ranges out to the west, which I don't remember the name of off the top of my head. It's in the Caucasus, Tian Shan, and Pamir Mountains of Central Asia, and the Altai Mountains of Western Mongolia. So, it's actually a little further north than the Yeti.
Ooh, that's wild. And, like, I know a lot of people talk about the Almas as a tribe of peoples up there, kind of like the Native Americans in the north of here like to talk about them as well. Like, I would also like to point out, though, that the type of people that live in those areas are very similar to the Native Americans that live, like, out in Alaska up here or out in Canada. They're very survivalistic, salt-of-the-earth people, you know what I mean? And so, like, it's not, to me, a leap of logic for them to look at these sort of things and these kind of experiences and family units as a peoples. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Honestly, that's as special we could do is just international Squatches.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a whole list of them, and some of them are pretty interesting.
We'll get into other ones too, because some of them are real interesting.
We have some notable ones on here, yeah. So our next one on the docket is Monster Quest, one of many television programs over the decades that have introduced people to Sasquatch and cryptozoology. I remember when I was a kid, I was an avid watcher. It was like MythBusters and Monster Quest were like the two like shows that I would watch like religiously.
Same. Big time. Like, and the big part of having these like kind of shows on the iceberg is their ability to get the subject out to regular people. You know, like beforehand, Bigfoot was a very fringe topic. Like now out here, like people at least know of the topic. Like a lot of people might be like, what the fuck's a Bigfoot? Like back in the early 2000s. You know what I mean? Way before Monster Quest even came out.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy how like Bigfoot is kind of like mainstream and actually accepted. Like, there was a time period where you'd get ridiculed for coming out with like a Bigfoot story, and nowadays, like if you have a Bigfoot story, people like want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this isn't just, like, I'm not just talking about, like, in the circles that we run in, obviously, but, like, if you have a Bigfoot story, I mean, you might get teased a little bit about it, but it's not, like, going to ruin your reputation like it used to. Very interesting.
Absolutely. Like, speaking of which, we got a person in here very soon that we can go into that topic with. However, speaking of mainstream media, let's get into the next topic. Jack Link's beef jerky messing with Sasquatch, baby.
Yep.
Possibly one of the only accurate Hollywood interpretations, believe it or not, because half of the time, if you listen to interviews and accounts of people who have come across these entities, if you're messing with them or you come across them and they don't notice you, there's a lot of stuff that comes around in these stories that sound a lot like a messing with Sasquatch commercial.
Now, admittedly, the results are never as funny as the commercials are.
No.
Territorial Squatch, stuff like that. So
don't prank Sasquatch if you see one.
Don't fuck with the Sasquatch, y'all.
It's not gonna work for you. However, let's get. There ain't too much else to really go on with that one besides maybe the Modern Warfare.
The commercials are funny and yeah, the commercials are funny and the beef jerky's mediocre at best. So
exactly.
Yep.
Now let's go ahead and get into the next topic. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, very important piece of the puzzle behind Sasquatch.
We actually brought him up when we last talked actual Sasquatch, which was it was like the second After Hours. We mentioned him a couple of times.
Absolutely. Now, sorry, I had to take a drink there.
Yep.
Now, this man is a expert in primate locomotion. And he's analyzed a lot of casts over the years. He's analyzed a lot of big footage and everything. And he's put a lot of his reputation on his work and his career on the line in order to give his objective opinion on a lot of these topics. And he's went out on excursions. He's went out on multiple hunts to go and see and hear things. And he's not exactly arguing against Bigfoot. Let's put it that way. He's kind of in the opinion of that's a lot of stuff you can't really explain any other way. Especially with prints. That's kind of his specialty. He's got a theory that we'll get into later. It's kind of more of a deeper topic. But he's made a lot of contributions to the overall scientific thought process of Bigfoot, and he's really helped get the topic into a little bit higher of a standing. Because let's be honest, a lot of people be like, "Oh shit, these people are crazy." Well, it's no, this dude's got a doctor.
He helps legitimize it a lot, and it puts him in a strange position because obviously if you're a legitimate scientist of any kind and you mention the name Bigfoot in any kind of academia setting, it is immediately going to get you ghosted by your colleagues. But at the same time, there is an existing kind of anti-authoritarian streak in the Bigfoot community, which admittedly is not as strong as it used to be, but it's still kind of there, where anybody from academia or anything like that, somebody that people don't want to trust because they're the kind of people who turn their noses up at the kind of research, Bigfoot enthusiasts do. But
I think there's another portion of it. I'll throw this out here real quick. I think there's some people, because let's be honest, the Bigfoot community, you meet all kinds. Okay,
you do, you really do.
So
you really do.
I think there's a good portion of them out there that don't want someone from science really weighing in, because suddenly whatever they're doing looks so much more insignificant. You know what I mean? They want to be the ones to find Bigfoot. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people out there that are like that. However, let's go ahead and get into it a little bit farther. Let's go ahead and get into the whole origin of the name.
Yep.
Logging roads. So there's an old story, I believe it's in Washington or Oregon, where there's these loggers going far out into the deep trying to go and get trees. And they're logging roads, they drive these big vehicles in after cutting down a bunch of trees and shit. So, like, the mud and the dirt is really soft whenever they're driving these big ass vehicles through them, right? And so it's easy to tell if somebody else drove in, and it's really easy to tell if someone walked in or out using these things. So these logging road workers came to a surprise one day whenever they seen a 18-inch track in the mud, just sploop right there by the freaking machinery. Whenever they came in the next day, no tracks in or out, just these footprints around the clearing that they made. So they didn't use the road. Now, the best part about this is that these old men, salts of the earth individuals, like I said earlier, they looked down there and they said, man, that's Bigfoot, and the name stuck. And that is literally the story of why we call it Bigfoot. Whereas there's a myriad of terms and phrases in the Native American languages for these peoples or these entities, and yeah, we just kind of went, man, that's a Bigfoot. What we gonna call this? Bigfoot.
Yep, just a bunch of, good old boys.
Now, I don't know if I'd have it any other way. It's definitely American. Now, what do you want to discuss next? Because, there's two right there, kind of real close together.
We'll tackle David Paulides, and then we'll hit the next two kind of together since they're intrinsically tied. So, I'll let you talk about Mr. Paulides.
All right.
Because you consume a lot of his material.
Well, I consumed enough in order to get my opinions, and then if he ever comes across anything, I won't binge his stuff anymore. I kind of did trying to catch up to the topic because he's recently done a whole YouTube series called Bigfoot 101 where he literally does a video essay series where he explains the journey that he took from 1980 to the present day on how he got his understanding in his thought process. So that is one of the biggest things I think people who know David Paulides don't know about him. Alright, everybody knows him from Missing 411, but no one knows that he's been in the Bigfoot scene longer than Matt Moneymaker of the BFRO. Mm-hmm. He's published books since the 1980s, with research done in Native American reservations far out into the Pacific Northwest. He's been all over the United States doing covering missing persons and doing Bigfoot research. He does Can-Am Missing Project. He's a big name in this space of cryptozoology, and let's call it high strangeness. I think is probably the best way to put it. Now, Missing 411 later on down in the iceberg. But I think, personally, there's been times wherever the man's kind of said something that's been misattributed or said something that you can't really find in a newspaper article, which kind of is rough because his background is he's a retired police officer and an investigator. That's what gives him quite a lot of credence to his reports, to his theories, because he tries to make every one of his people that he talks to sign an affidavit. That way, it's a legally binding document that he can use to file a case. So he goes through this whole thing like a police officer, which there's a whole lot of Bigfoot researchers out there that just don't have those sorts of skills. So him applying his real world skills to this topic has generated a lot of thought in certain schools of thought in the Bigfoot community. And he's done a lot for the networking. I think that's the biggest contribution he's made to Bigfoot over the years, is he's a keynote speaker at like 70% of Bigfoot conferences. Like, he's everywhere. Yep. He's going everywhere. And he tries to bring everybody he can with him. And he loves the networking. You know what I mean? So he does make and sell movies, all that other kind of stuff, not trying to like shill this man's business or anything like that. But he does bring a lot of discussion to the table, I think is the best way to put it. Now, do you want to cover the next topic?
I will say, you know, I respect his work a lot. Well, actually, no, I'll touch on that when we get to the super one. Yeah, I'll get the next two. So the last ones on our first tier are kind of tied together, which are the BFRO, the TV show Finding Bigfoot. BFRO is the biggest and most recognized research group about Bigfoot in North America. It has the largest collection of eyewitness reports. They have people in every state. You know, they go out on expeditions frequently and stuff like that. And their influence became big enough that their lead, Matt Moneymaker, was eventually able to fund a TV show, Finding Bigfoot, which is kind of infamous for not finding Bigfoot.
Being more of a reality show.
Yeah, which can be attributed to a lot of things, such as, you know, reality TV producers not giving a shit about the topic. You know, the kind of futile effort of trying to legitimatize the entire, you know, study of Bigfoot, while also going around and talking to people who've seen it, and just like, yeah, unfortunate, but it's another one of those programs in recent memory that kind of helped get the name out there. And even while Finding Bigfoot is a sort of a source of mockery for the BFRO, it still is at the moment the best collection of data that we have about, you know, where Bigfoot can be found and stuff like that. So, and the thing that gets me is that's only like the stuff that's on their site is only like a third of the stuff they have. Because if I remember correctly from what Matt Moneymaker said in an interview, they have thousands of eyewitness reports backed up because they haven't been able to get people out there to verify them yet.
Right, because this is all volunteer work, which is something that is really big to point out with this whole organization. Like, the man, when it comes down to it, like, he does not do this for money. He's, like, you watch his interviews, he is obviously passionate about the subject. That's why he's doing everything he does. Like, love him or hate him, the passion is there.
Yes. So, and that's it for our first tier. This is, so we kind of really touch on our opinions on everything here because, like, they were pretty easy to explain.
Right. I think that's not a bad place.
So we don't really have any afterthoughts here, so we're just going to go ahead and move to our second tier, the surface level. Abnormally large tracks, which is exactly what it is. Large tracks. This is probably the biggest form of evidence that we have in regards to Bigfoot after Big footage itself. There are tons of people who have casts of Sasquatch tracks. This is something that goes all the way back to like the 50s, even before the Patterson footage. So, you know, those tracks, they're important. And our first topic is actually tied to the highest office in the United States government. It's the Bauman story. Jaster, would you care to explain?
Yeah, give me 1 second. I'm like looking it up to make sure I don't mess it up.
Oh man, I'm looking at our timestamp and we gotta stick and move. We're already over half an hour and we're only on the second tier.
Well, I think honestly, when I think about other other iceberg videos, I'm like, man, I think we just signed ourselves up for something, bro. I think we did.
We got into this without thinking about the consequences. Oh no, not me reaping what I. Oh no, not me reaping what I sowed. Oh no.
Yeah, right. So, let me take y'all back to a place called Montana. All right, we're going to be going back to this place later on in the iceberg, but we're going to break the ice here. No pun intended. So, a man named Teddy Roosevelt, you might have heard of him, recounts this tale that was told to him by a friend named Bauman of their time in North Dakota and in Montana. Alright? So, the whole point about this story is that this was apparently told to Teddy Roosevelt. Alright? About how Bauman and his friend were way out in Montana, and they started hearing things rustling around in their campfire at night. Huge, looming bipedal, like, steps and sounds, grunting noises, all that kind of stuff, right? Now, mind, this was like back in 1886, kind of level, you know what I mean? I think the book that told this story, published it first, was called The Wilderness Hunter. That was published back in 1893. And think about what kind of firearms and weaponry and traps these kind of people have at that time, especially out in Montana, that you got to carry on like a horse or a mule. So they didn't have much. They had rifles, maybe pistols, that kind of thing. And so this happened for a few nights, and these guys are really obviously freaked out by it. And the biggest part about it is, like, they started hearing noises, they started smelling stuff. Things were very obviously what we would consider nowadays a Bigfoot encounter, like a Class C or a Class B encounter. So, these guys freaked out, decide they're going to break camp, head back, right? So, they've got traps for beavers out in multiple parts of this laked area. And one of the guys goes one way, Bauman goes the other way, okay? So, Bauman said, he remarked on it multiple times in the story, this place should have been rife with beaver. Alright, but they caught like 2 the whole time they were there. And like normally beaver hunters, like they go and they migrate around different areas, they get tons of beaver pelts. Like these guys got 2. It wasn't really good. So the guy went ahead and decided he's going to go get his last trap, and he's still like looking over his shoulder the whole time, you know, trying to get all these traps undone. And he gets a beaver in his last one, and he's like, oh cool, so he skins it, and he starts heading back to camp. So the issue is like his buddy must have gotten back to camp first, okay? Because the dude was beat to hell, ripped apart, and he was stretched apparently beside the trunk of a great fallen spruce tree. And the dude's neck was broken. There were 4 great fang marks at the throat, and the body was still warm. So the dude knew whatever had done this was still in the area. So he sat down at the spruce log for a second. Everything was kind of packed, so he packed up all the shit he could carry. He got the fuck out of there. So this was all told to Roosevelt, alright? Well, a lot of people regard the context of the story and all that kind of stuff in some amount of scrutiny. So people aren't exactly sure because of the way the story delivered it and the way that Theodore Roosevelt talks about the story. It almost alludes to maybe he was the one that told the author and then said, tell him it was this friend of mine named Bauman. It's one of the conspiracies behind the story, to put it one way.
Yeah, it is very frequently speculated that this is actually something that happened to Teddy. And he just...
Maybe the friend was Bauman?
Yeah. And he basically just, put it in the shoes of someone else to kind of separate the story from him and maintain his legitimacy, because he had a image as the president to maintain. Not that him, having a friend killed by Bigfoot would have murdered his image. He's like one of the most badass presidents we ever had.
Well, let's put it in another context. The man also decided later to found the National Park Service and establish national parks and shit like that.
Yeah, and that's put a pin in that.
Definitely,
All right.
we're gonna lead y'all a little bit, but that way we're not hitting you upside the head with later
But
things.
yeah, no, the Bauman story is like one of the like most enshrined Bigfoot tales. There, it's up there with a couple other we're gonna bring up here as we go down here. But like this is one of the first ones you kind of find out about if you're looking for historical encounters.
Yep.
So our next one is probably one of the more famous subspecies, variants, cousins, whatever you want to call it, of Sasquatch, the Florida skunk ape, the Florida man of Bigfoot.
Yeehaw.
Now, odors are a sign that a Sasquatch is in the area, but the Florida skunk ape is unique in that it is the telltale sign that it is there. This thing emits an odor so foul that it's known to make people retch and vomit.
Let's think. You got big, long Matty-O hair, and you're wading through a shitty swamp your whole life.
Uh-huh.
And that's your bathing water, too. Like, you're probably not smelling too hot. Like, Bigfoot ain't got shampoo. You know what I mean? They got beef jerky.
When it comes to visual evidence we have in regards to the skunk ape, there are two really big ones. There's the infamous photograph of it allegedly stealing, I think it was peaches or oranges.
Yeah, from some old
someone's
lady's backyard.
Yep. And then there's the other one that was taken off, some footage that was taken on the side of the road, and of him crossing an opening in the swamp, and then noticing that he was noticed, and then running like hell for cover. I saw a stabilized version of that footage recently, and it's really fucking bizarre.
Yeah.
This, like mainly the footage itself is like 2.5 minutes, but like you can see him moving over several different kinds of terrain. Like you can tell like he hits some dirt, and then he gets a swampy patch, and then he gets back on some dirt, and it's so fucking weird. I've seen a lot of big footage, but like the way the entity in that particular piece moves just baffles me. Because it's nowhere close to the stride of Patty. It's bizarre.
There are some big footage out there. I wish there was one that particular that had a name so we could reference it. But like, remember that one that I showed you where the thing reached its arm out to touch a tree, and it was like it reached like 4 or 5 freaking feet out to touch this tree, and like it really just showed how crazy long the arms these things are. Like, the thing was scary, but like skunk apes, in my opinion, they're like one of the most unnerving looking ones, our variants out there, because like both the big footage and the photo, these things look mean. Like they're dark looking, like
yeah, no, like even
matted,
the one in that,
like they look nasty.
Even the one in it's if you're, by the way, if you want to look at the clip, it's Dave Shealy's 2000 skunk ape footage. But yeah, no, these guys are off-putting to say the least.
And they also tend to be, as some people might imagine, a little bit more aggressive when it comes to personal encounters. There's certain ones that don't want to fuck with people, certain ones that do.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're definitely more temperamental than their northwestern cousin. And the thing about the skunk ape is that it's so prominent, there are actually research teams dedicated to specifically finding it. So,
some of the best encounters that you hear are of skunk apes too, because they're in Florida. So you get Florida man encounters skunk ape, which is like some of the best media you could ever think of.
It's like Godzilla versus King Kong, you know.
It's absolutely crazy.
So yeah, so moving on, we have another historical Bigfoot account, Albert Ostman. We're not going to dwell on this one too long because we actually talked about this in our last Bigfoot.
Yeah, he was the dude we think potentially, allegedly, wanted to mess with a Bigfoot. You know what I'm saying?
Well, he didn't want to. Yeah, because like he went out prospecting, then he abandoned his Native American guide. And then he got snatched in the middle of the night by a Squatch and taken back to their home where the rest of the pod was. And he spends a lot of his account describing the female Bigfoot, the mother, particularly. And me, Kaden, and Jaster were all like, this guy wanted to shag that fucking Squatch.
It was weird, man.
It's very bizarre. And then he alleges that he managed to get away by throwing the contents of his tinderbox, or not his tinderbox, his snuff box, in the face of the father, and then running like hell, and then getting picked up by a logging crew. So it's old, and it's very suspect for a Sasquatch encounter.
To put it mildly, there's a lot of weird shit going on in that story.
But if true, and this is a big if, it gives some interesting insights. But if you want to hear our thoughts on that, just go listen to our last Bigfoot episode. We're not dwelling on this one. So here, Jaster, you handle the next one.
All right, so I brought this up a couple of times whenever me and you talk about Bigfoot, or whenever me and Kaiden talk about it. There is a genome project that was funded by doctors, veterinarians. David Paulides also chipped in on it back in the 90s to 2000s. And they brought in tons of samples of supposed Bigfoot hair, tissue samples, mucus, fecal matter samples, all this other kind of stuff. And they compiled DNA off of various different samples and came up with interesting results. Like, they claim that whatever it is isn't human, but it doesn't have anything in the animal kingdom either. Like, it's not that close to a lot of other species out there. And there's a lot of scrutiny that's been put into this genome project. The thing that I kind of shirk on a little bit was that there was a portion of the evidence that was handled at a veterinarian's lab rather than at the actual DNA lab in New Orleans where it was founded. Now, if you want to get more into this topic more, David Paulides actually does a whole episode on the involvement of this entire thing. And the interesting point he made, and I'll bring this up, is the cost of doing the same thing nowadays that he did back 20 years ago has reduced like by a quarter, down to like a quarter or a fifth of what it is back when he did it. And to this day, there hasn't been a single scientifically backed organization that did the same thing to refute him or refute the team. Like, they could have done it for cheaper than what they did it for to prove him wrong, and no one has ever attempted it. So, like, it's kind of an interesting point in the entire conversation, but to me, I think it brings up a lot more questions than answers until we get an actual confirmed specimen or release information of us having one in the past or something like that. Mm-hmm. I think it's a little bit more of an outlier topic that people might hear about in passing that gets them into the topic.
So, next on the list is the first of many theories we're going to be talking about. It's a theory regarding as to what Squatch actually is. And this one is Bigfoot is a hominid theory. It is a missing ancestor or relative of Homo sapiens sapiens, which is us, or Homo sapiens, which is our predecessors, or some other offshoot of some other Neanderthal or Cro-Magnon or whatever, tribe that managed to exist in the modern day and mutate into whatever it is over time. It is a man. Bigfoot is a man. That's basically what the theory is. The problem when it comes to the nature of Bigfoot is that if you want to talk about cloudy waters, the nature of Bigfoot is the cloudiest it gets. We know, like, the general body structure, the anatomy, the behavior. We have no idea what the fuck it is, though. And that's going to come up a lot as we go down this iceberg.
Now, like, one of the points people make when they subscribe to this theory, because personally, it's the camp that I align myself more towards than just the next theory that we're going to talk about. But to me, there's way too much weird shit that goes on in their behavior and how they communicate, all that other kind of stuff, for it to be just simply a great ape, like a gorilla, but in the North American continent. So,
I concur. They are definitely too intelligent to just be apes.
which means they could be a Diapithecus. Like, there's all sorts of different combinations and theories, but the other part of it that I like to bring up is that we've been on this planet like almost 250,000 years, right? As humans.
What's that you got here? Hang on, come here.
And,
sorry, my cat's here, and
oh,
he's got something in his fur. And I'm trying to figure out what it is. Is that a tick? What is that?
He's out here being wild. But we've been on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. And according to science, the last 2,000 of those years, we are alone. We are the last hominid creature on this planet.
It's just a burr. We're fine.
That's good. So, like, a lot of people wonder, it's like, man, that's like less than 1% of the time we've been on the planet. Or it's like less than 10% of the time we've been on the planet. So, like, to them, that's like, man, that's kind of weird. You know what I mean? So, I find it is probably the more likely of the two camps to be, like, true. If this is all true, which I'm in the camp that these things probably do exist. I've had weird shit happen. I brought it up on the podcast myself. So, like, they would probably be more in this camp than the other, to me. But let's go ahead and get on into the next topic here.
All right, speed round. We're gonna try and do like, I'd say like 8 minutes, 18 more minutes of this roughly. So next is the Goofy movie. We talk a lot about a lot of different media that kind of introduced Bigfoot. The Jaster was really insistent on this one because there is a part in the movie where Bigfoot shows up and fucks up Goofy's car.
It's a whole situation, bro.
It's a whole situation that kind of contributes to the plot. And yeah, so...
it's probably the first time a lot of people in our generation even seen Bigfoot, and we never even knew it.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, he's in there as a joke. Like, the whole scene's a joke.
But how accurate would you call his depiction in Disney's Goofy movie?
Hang on, I have to actually... Goofy movie, Bigfoot.
To me, it's pretty accurate, bro. He ends up going all kinds of crazy. Trying to get into the food and shit.
It's a very cartoony, exaggerated depiction of him. I think it's... I don't know, man. I'm just like, whatever on it.
That's fair. But let's get into one of the best known mediums.
Yeah! The Legend of Boggy Creek. Yeah! If you want to talk about, like, influential pieces and touchstones of Bigfoot culture, look no further than this. This really helped ignite the Bigfoot craze in the 60s and 70s. Legend of Boggy Creek is a docudrama film talking about a particular squatch from Falk, Arkansas called the Falk Monster, who was a very testy individual, to say the least, who spooked the hell out of a lot of people. There is a moment from that film that forever will stick with me. It's the scene where the woman is sleeping in her living room, and it reaches through the window at her.
Yeah, right?
Like, I first saw that in the Monster Quest episode where they were talking about that, but, like, they recreate that particular incident in the film, too, and it gives me chills every time, because, like, this is a squatch that gives no shits about approaching a house, and is more than willing to abduct women. All I'm saying is, hide your kids, hide your wives, you know?
Dude, he didn't care, bro.
He
people
didn't
trying
fucking
to gun
care.
for him every night.
Yeah, no. There's one particular incident where there were some old boys who were sitting lead down range, and they got tons of hits on them to do nothing. So, and this film spawned a whole fucking franchise, looking to cash in on, you know, and make as much money as the original did. There is Return to Boggy Creek. Then there's Boggy Creek, and then of course there's Boggy Creek 2, and The Legend Continues, which most famously was on MST3K.
Mm-hmm. I didn't
So-
watch any of those. I just watched the original.
Yeah, really the only one that's worth seeing is the original. The rest of them are a bunch of bunk. They're B-list shit. They take the docudrama bit out and they just make it a monster movie, and it's whatever. So, even if like, it's a fantastic film. I can't recommend it enough. There's tons of gorgeous shots of nature. The score is really ominous, and it just, like, despite being a low budget flick, man, dude, ooh.
A lot of the people in that movie were the people giving the encounters to the director.
So,
I think it's a really good piece of work.
yeah, absolutely.
So I'll let you get into the other theory.
So the next one is Bigfoot is a great ape theory, which basically, puts forward the idea that Bigfoot is kind of like a North American variant of of a gorilla or something like that, or an orangutan. It's a great ape. It's not a hominid, and yeah, which when you look at the history of the gorilla, it begins to seem a little bit plausible, because for the longest time people thought gorillas were just a myth until they finally found them sons of bitches.
Or the Billy ape in Africa.
So
the lion killer. Like, I will give him this on this whole theory. There's a concept in nature called northern gigantification, where the farther north you go, the more sparse wildlife is, but the bigger it is too. So, like, if it is really just a great ape that learned to adapt up north, I guess that would make some amount of sense, given the trend of animals being farther north being bigger and closer to the equator being smaller. But to me, the behavior of the creature makes this, no doubt, the smartest great ape.
Yeah.
Ever. Like, by far. But let's go ahead and get into one of the best topics about Bigfoot, whenever we talk about it anyway. The infamous, legendary...
The Blob Squatch.
Absolutely.
So, Blob Squatch is a derogatory term that's used by any Bigfoot enthusiast to refer to an entity on a photo that someone insists is a Sasquatch, but looks like nothing but a mass of pixels. And, the thing is that this can apply to both alleged photos and actual for real big footage. There is a lot of old footage from the 90s and early 2000s that were on camcorders, and as they've been, passed from generation of media to generation of media, have lost a lot of their definition.
Yep.
And have created blob squatches. For instance, the infamous Memorial Day footage of the squatch up on the mountainside.
Yeah, right.
Nowadays you can barely make that thing out. Despite the fact that I remember back, when that thing was airing on TV, you could very clearly make the figure out on the hilltop.
Mm-hmm.
So it's unfortunate, but like, yeah. So there you go, Blob Squatch.
You love to see him, but you hate to see him.
Yep. So.
Do you want to do the next story, or do you want me to do it again?
I will tackle it, because I'm very familiar with this one, because this was one of the first, big Sasquatch stories I ever remember learning about when I was getting into it as a kid.
Alright, I'm going to get a drink then really quick, okay?
Okay, so this is probably going to be the last one for this part, because we're wrapping up Tier 2, and we're about to hit the hour mark. So, yeah. So, Ape Canyon. Ape Canyon is a very infamous historical incident regarding in Sasquatch lore. It's pretty much enshrined in legend. And it's kind of a topic in and of itself in researching and finding the location of where it actually happens, etc., etc. But to basically kind of give you the basics of it, Ape Canyon is a gorge along the Plains of Abraham, which is on the southeast shoulder of Mount St. Helens in the state of Washington. Way back in 1924, a group of miners looking for gold had a violent encounter with a group of Sasquatches. One of them shot one, and this incurred the wrath of basically a whole group of them who began sieging their cabin. They were throwing rocks, trying to stick their hands through cracks and stuff like that. And meanwhile, these poor miners were stuck in there and basically having to shoot out through the chinks in the logs and stuff like that. And as soon as dayrise came and the apes left, they got the fuck out of there. Now, the thing is, we know for a fact that this did happen because one of the people involved in the incident actually wrote a book after the fact. But said book involves a lot of other weird stuff. Yeah. About like an Indian spirit guide and angels and all sorts of weird shit. But it's the only actual account we have from somebody who was there. So
yeah, right.
Now the thing is, the cabin itself is no more. Anything that was left of it most likely got obliterated in the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens.
Which is unfortunate.
Which
Put a
sucks.
pin in that
yeah.
location, though. That'll come up a lot later.
However, that said, there is a researcher who has managed to hunt down the site of it. And according to him, it's in a very remote region of the mountain that only like a super experienced hiker should go to. And he said he was going to write a book about it, but that was like 6 or 7 years ago, and I haven't heard hide nor hair of that book since. Which sucks because I would have bought that book immediately because it's kind of like, it's one of the stories of Bigfoot lore. Like, this is the one everybody wants to believe because it's so fantastical. You know, a group of men getting into a prolonged shootout against a horde of angry Sasquatches. That sounds like something right out of a movie.
Right.
You want to believe it just because of how fantastic and insane it is. And there's a lot of details. But yeah, so anyways, there's this thing that's like, oh, well, actually, it's some Boy Scouts from a nearby YMCA camp. But the thing is, like, said camp is like 10 miles away over really difficult terrain from there. And there's no way a bunch of teenagers, you know, looking to get some laughs would have gone, not only have been able to make that safely and, you know, pull a prank on these people with guns and then get away safely as well. That's just ridiculous. So there you go. And with that, that wraps up our second tier. And that also wraps up this episode as well. So thank you all for listening to part 1 of what's going to be a very long saga of After Hours episodes. Me and Jaster started this project not really realizing what we were getting ourselves into, but hopefully we'll be able to do this in 5 parts or less.
I think, though, this is going to be a good journey for us anyway, and a great journey for everybody else. Hopefully, this doesn't get too crazy.
Yeah, so we'll see you next time. This is Kazari Iwakura signing off.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of KOR After Hours. If you like the show and you'd like to hear more from us, you can check us out on Twitch, Twitter, and on YouTube. You can give us a subscribe out here on Spotify or on YouTube. Anything and everything helps out. You can also check out the tip jar, links in the description. Thank you very much for checking us out tonight. Have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.